So, if you've ever messed up with someone and felt that panicked urge to immediately fix it, then this is for you. We're going to break down a really counterintuitive, step by step strategy from a source that's all about re attracting someone by doing the exact opposite of what your instincts are screaming at you to do. This isn't just winging it, this is a tactical playbook. And the whole foundation of this thing really rests on this one kind of brutal idea right here. The source basically says that everything your gut tells you to do, send one more text, try to explain yourself, just fix it, is actually making things worse. It's digging you into a deeper hole. And you have to accept that for any of this to work. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into why our natural reactions almost always backfire. Then we get into the heavy stuff, the two main phases. Phase 1 is a 21-day reset to just clear the board, and phase 2 is what's called a pattern interrupt to totally change her perception of you. And we'll wrap up with the one big idea that makes it all click.
Okay, let's really get to the core of the problem. When things go wrong, most of us flip into what the source calls fix mode. We think if we can just craft that one perfect message, everything will be okay. But all we're really doing is piling on pressure when what the situation actually needs is space. Total release of that pressure.
And this right here is the perfect metaphor for it. Trying to fix things by constantly texting or calling is literally like poking a burn to try and make it heal faster. It doesn't work. You're just making it worse, reminding her of the pain. The only real move is to take your hand away, completely. So that leads us directly into the first big actionable phase. And this isn't just about giving her some space. No, this is way more extreme. The source calls for complete and total disappearance for 21 days straight. It's designed to reset her emotional slate, and just as important, it's designed to reset your own head. And they are so strict about this number. 21 days means you are a ghost. No texting, no calling, no watching her stories on social media, no accidentally bumping into her. You're just gone. It has to be absolute, or the reset just won't work. But here's what's really interesting. This isn't just about sitting on your hands and waiting. No, the 21 days are structured for you to do some internal work. Week 1 is all about breaking your own obsessive thoughts, that mental loop we get stuck in. Week 2 is about the really hard part, genuinely accepting that you can't control the outcome. And week 3, that's when you have to get brutally honest with yourself about your part in what happened. Week 1 is the most practical. It's about cutting off your own supply of emotional fuel. So yeah, stop watching her stories, stop checking her profile. But that last one, stop rereading old conversations, that's the big one. It just traps you in the past. Remember, if you're silent on your phone, but you're still obsessing in your head, you haven't really disappeared. Okay, and this is the question that everybody asks. You're committed, you're doing the 21 days, and then ping, she sends you a text. Your first instinct is to jump all over it, right? But that would shatter the whole strategy. So, what do you do? The source has a really specific protocol here. First, you wait. At least a day. You have to kill that impulse to reply right away. Then, your response needs to be 3 things: warm, brief, and vague. The goal is not to be cold or angry. The goal is to make her curious. You want her to be left thinking, why does he seem so okay? All right, the 21 days are done. You've created that space. But just being silent isn't enough to create reattraction. That's where phase 2 comes in. And its only job is to completely shatter the mental file she already has on you. You have to interrupt the pattern she's come to expect. Think of it like this. In her mind, she's got this file folder with your name on it. And in that file are labels like predictable, needy, always available. The pattern interrupt is all about showing her something that directly contradicts every single label in that file. You want that moment where she thinks, wait a minute, maybe I didn't have him figured out at all. So how do you actually do that? Well, the source lays out a really specific 5-step tactical playbook for this phase. This isn't just about trying to be different. It's a calculated series of moves designed for a very specific psychological effect. So here are the 5 steps. It all starts with being honest about the impression you left. Then you strategically come back as the opposite. Now, step 3, using confusion as a tool, is incredibly powerful, and we're going to dive into that one specifically. Finally, you have to make your new life visible, and most importantly, you have to actually be living it.
So let's break down that confusion tool because it's a slick two-part move. The first part is designed to create a feeling of relief. After the 21 days, you reach out, you suggest getting together. To her, this feels normal. The tension is gone. She thinks she knows what's happening. And then, just as she's feeling comfortable, you pull the rug out. You cancel the plans. And you do it vaguely, without offering a new date. See, you're pulling that certainty right back out from under her. It totally breaks her expectation that you're just snapping back into that old, predictable role. That is the pattern interrupt. And this is the entire reason for that move. That feeling of confusion, that, wait, what just happened moment, that is the fertile ground where new curiosity starts to grow. When she doesn't know where she stands anymore, her mind has to start working on the problem of you all over again. Now, there are a few crucial rules for this phase. The change has to feel real, not like you're just putting on a show. And when you make your new life visible, it has to look authentic, not like some performance designed to make her jealous. But most importantly, as you see here, do not explain your changes. Let the mystery do the work for you. And that brings us to the final, and honestly, the most important idea behind this entire strategy. Everything we've talked about, the disappearance, the pattern interrupt, the vague replies, it all serves one master principle. And here it is. According to this source, certainty is the absolute enemy of attraction. As long as she can predict your next move, as long as she knows exactly how you feel and what you're thinking, she has no reason to reevaluate you. She can just keep you in that old box. It's only when that certainty is shattered that her brain is forced to pay attention again. So we'll end with this question for you to really think about. This whole strategy is about using mystery to create curiosity. So take a hard look at how you communicate. What are you over-explaining? What interesting questions about yourself are you accidentally answering before they're even asked? The answer to that, well, that might be the key to changing the entire dynamic.
Let's get right into it. So let's say you did it. The silence worked. You've created a little crack in her perception of you. That old file she had on you, it's broken. But here's the thing, that confusion is super fragile. And the biggest mistake you can make right now is rushing in to fix it. Instead, you've got to use that uncertainty as fuel, not put the fire out.
And that is exactly where phase 3 comes in. It's called the open loop. See, after that pattern interrupt, you've basically created a vacuum in her mind. Now, the goal isn't to fill it up with answers. No. The goal is to strategically keep it open, to plant an idea that just kind of lingers long after you stop talking.
This whole idea is built on something called unresolved sentiment. And honestly, this is the engine that drives attraction at this stage. It taps into this really weird psychological quirk we all have, where our brains remember unfinished tasks way more vividly than the ones we've completed. Think of it like a little emotional itch that you just can't help but want to scratch. When her mind keeps going back to something you said, trying to piece it together, well, you're living in her head, rent-free.
So, okay, how do you actually do this? Well, the playbook gives you a really clear tactic. First, you plant the loop. The example they give is a text like, "Just saw Night at the Roxbury on TV. Reminded me of you." That's it. That's the text. It immediately creates this information gap that she's gonna feel compelled to fill. So when she asks why, you move to step 2. You don't answer fully. You give her just enough to spark another question, but you never give her the full resolution. Her investment, which you can literally measure by how many questions she asks, that becomes your key benchmark.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This is the core principle. The second you give her a clean, neat, complete explanation, the loop closes. The feeling is gone, the tension disappears, and boom, you're right back to being predictable. Answering her question feels like the polite, normal thing to do, but in this playbook, it literally kills the very thing you're trying to build.
Which leads us directly into phase 4, the strategic pullback. Now, this is where it gets kind of counterintuitive. You've just spent all this time building up curiosity and investment, so your natural instinct is to push forward, right? Wrong. The playbook says the very next move is to reduce the oxygen.
And the playbook is incredibly specific here. The first step is to drop your effort by a whopping 60 to 75%. This is not a subtle shift, okay? It needs to be a noticeable drop in how much you're investing. We're talking fewer texts, shorter conversations, you're initiating less. You're still there, you're still warm when you talk, but the sheer volume of your presence just drops off a cliff.
And this analogy from the source is just perfect. It captures the psychology completely. When your attention is always there, always available, its value isn't really felt. By pulling it back, you're not trying to punish her. You're making her consciously notice what your presence actually means.
She starts to feel the absence of something she was just starting to take for granted again.
But here's the crucial part, the vibe. This whole phase falls apart if it feels like a performance. This is not about making these big, obvious moves to try and make her jealous. No, it's a subtle shift that just implies your world kept on moving, with or without her. One feels like a cheap tactic, the other feels real, and that's what creates authentic uncertainty.
And believe me, it really is a balancing act. This entire phase is all about getting the dosage just right. You need to be detached, but not so distant that the connection just dies. You reduce your effort, but you don't cut it off completely. The goal is to create just enough uncertainty to make her think, but not so much that she gives up and just figures, oh well, he's moved on. It's a really delicate but powerful calibration.
Which leads us to the culmination of everything you have done up to this point. Phase 5, the final move. All the previous work, the silence, the pattern interrupt, those open loops, the pullback, all of it was just preparation. It was all designed to guide her emotions into one very specific zone for one single moment.
And the stakes are high. That emotional buildup you've created, it has a shelf life. It is not a permanent state. A few days of hesitation, a couple of missed opportunities, and all that tension you worked so hard to build can just deflate right back down to neutral. This is not a phase you can drag out.
Now, this is probably the biggest reason for hesitation for most guys. You're waiting for this perfect, unmistakable signal. The playbook is super direct about this. The signal isn't some magical look or some special phrase she says, it's her presence. The fact that she was willing to be in a one-on-one situation with you is the green light. She could have said no, but she didn't. You have to trust that.
So what does execution actually look like? The playbook is crystal clear. 1, get her alone. 2, make the move. And specifically, it says to go for the kiss because it's direct and unambiguous. 3, do not ask for permission. The question, can I kiss you, just turns a charged moment into this clunky transaction and it kills all the tension you built. And 4, and this is critical, act within that single encounter. Don't let that window close.
So all of this really points to one final overarching theme that ties the entire strategy together. When you get to this final phase, there is only one effective approach.
So why is this one moment so critical? Because everything you did in the earlier phases was meant to build this very specific new image of you. Grounded, unpredictable, maybe even a little edgy. If you build that image for weeks, and then you freeze when the moment of truth finally arrives, the entire structure just collapses. She's not going to analyze it logically. She's just going to feel it all deflate.
And in the end, it just comes down to this. The playbook basically argues that acting and failing is way more respectable than not acting at all. Boldness in this moment confirms the entire new story you've been building. Hesitation just invalidates the whole thing. This is the one phase where boldness is really the only strategy that works.
And so, you've run the playbook from start to finish. You reset the board. You re-attracted. You made the final move. But this brings us to the most critical question of all, right? This strategy, it can get you back to square one, but what happens the day after? How do you build a real relationship from this foundation and not just fall back into the same old mistakes? Now that is the real challenge.